bad salespeople. They're just in the wrong role. They may go somewhere else and perform very well. But again, to answer that, I've seen it where, top performers, they call it feeding. They'll feed them under the table good accounts. Does anybody ever watch, was it Glenn Ross? Is that where you, so that's a great movie where the distribution of the accounts or territories, I've seen that all. But the funny thing is if you're ever in a sales company and working, the top performers always, as one guy told me, the cream always rises to the top. The same guys always finish at the top every year. It's funny. It's inevitable. You may have one guy, what do they call that? The black sheep, or what is it called?
Black swan.
Sneak in one year. But I can tell you, you're not going to be there again the next year.
No.
So every company handles that differently. Good managers really just know how to inspire people to help them be the best that they can be every day. And everybody's not going to finish at the top. You have to have the average, which is the 80%. That's always going to be in any company. Yeah. Before I finish up, I'm going to ask one more. Anybody? Yeah, please.
So I was just curious, based off everything you've said so far, do you think the important skills to becoming a successful salesperson are skills that you just naturally have, or something that can be trained on someone?
Without question, goes back to fixed versus growth mindset. Selling is a skill. You can develop, I think, for the most part, besides being maybe a professional athlete or an Olympic performer, you can develop most skills. IQ is not people think IQ, personality, extrovert are all things that come into play. Not necessarily so. In fact, some of the most introverted people are the most successful salespeople. Why? Because they're low key, and what happens? The psychology is people's guard automatically drops. And again, they go back to liking the person, trusting them, knowing that they're solving a problem. So I think anybody can learn. Again, a key is, going back to what you said, perseverance. You better have tenacity and perseverance. Because let me tell you something. I've traveled down some dark roads of nights where I couldn't sleep, weeks where I couldn't sleep. And it was never about money. I think one thing I've been lucky to have is never where I've been in a financial deficit. It was more about, I just wanted to be the best I could, and if I wasn't performing, and I was in what they call a rut, your mind starts to spiral down into that little deep, go down in that little deep circle, and it can get out of control. I've seen it before. I think everybody can learn to do well, and it all goes back to what he's asking about, good management, who really hire you for the right reason and think that you have what's the skills or experience or background that's in play that would be applicable to that role. That's key. I see a lot of people are always just who got hired because they needed butts in seats. They did not have the skills to do the job. So the management, in my opinion, and again, this is my opinion, did them a disservice by putting them in the role. I'll tell you real quick, they hired a young college kid. I've been there 8 years. By the way, I just left my job yesterday. So permanently. I was on a part-time basis. I think I told you. It's done. There was a young boy named Richley who came in. He was a boy. He was 22 years old. And let me tell you, timeshare selling is a meat grinder. You better come in and be ready and have a mental toughness about you. They hired him, and he didn't last long. And everybody, I think, knew he wasn't going to last long. He was a great guy. Being great or friendly doesn't always work in sales. People think you got to be a friend. You can't be friends with people. You have to be able to ask for business. But I felt so bad when he left. And by the way, he joined the Navy. Because I told him, and I'll never forget this, and it almost makes me emotional. I told him, I said, you're going to do well in your life, number one, because you had this experience, but you should have never been hired here. You didn't have the background or experience or, really maturity to do this job. And the person who hired you did you a disservice. So don't ever believe that because you were quote unquote not successful here, that you can't do well in some other arena. You can. You just were not a fit for this particular role. So, does that answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Brad, so you talked a little bit about ruts, and I'm wondering if you can tell us maybe a little bit more about like what a rut is like for maybe a salesperson, and also maybe a little bit about why it's so hard to get out of for many salespeople, and how it is that you or other salespeople that you're aware of have been able to maybe get out of ruts more easily than others.
I love it. I just listened to a podcast last night on this. I stumbled on it. No kidding. Stumbled on it. And it talked about they used the word rut. The one thing that I think that you can do is step back, and guess what? Go help someone else make a sale. Go assist someone else in your office. Because what's happening is your confidence is going down, your motivation, your attitude are all spiraling, right? And when that happens, and I'm telling you, I've been there many times, especially over the last 8.5 years with Marriott Vacation Club. Because you're second guessing your abilities after a while. I had in September of 2014, I had the worst month I ever had there. I went 27 meetings, 0 business. The worst ever. And I was going to leave. So I believe if you go out and maybe try to help another salesperson in closing a deal, that gets you out of yourself, if that makes sense. I don't believe that management should come to you and say, hey, what's going on? Because you know what? That exacerbates often. Reading. What I would do is read in between meetings. So basically, I'm trying to get my attitude back in play. Because it will spiral. Your attitude goes down. You're not. The other thing you have to look at is get another set of eyes to watch you. Because often everything in selling is about process. What happens is you get outside of that process and you make little moves outside of that lane that you're not aware of. And that little move outside of that lane may be the reason that you're not closing in a business. Sometimes you just get a lot of people in a row. It's like a blackjack or a blackjack table or roulette, whatever you want to call it, where they're just not viable buyers. That happens. But you start believing that it's your fault. You're responsible, but you start believing it's your fault and your confidence just spirals. That's the worst thing that can happen.
So there's there's some research that's going on right now. They call it like a hot hand effect.
Yes.
And so it's like a salesperson, and they've done this in a call center, and so they keep making calls. Their success in the prior calls is predictive of their success in the next call. And so if they've had 3 or 4 unsuccessful calls before that, they're much more likely to have an unsuccessful call next because their confidence is down.
That's exactly right.
They start deviating, etc. But of course they find the opposite too. When you've had 2 or 3 successes, the probability of your next call being a success goes up.
So let me. Daniel Goleman wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence, and he's talking about flow. So flow is where I'm in a state and everything's going right. I pick up the phone, and everything in selling is emotional. I'm going to go back to Dale Carnegie. In the first of his book, he says 15% of selling is product knowledge, 85% is the ability to deal with people. And you're absolutely right. So when someone gets in a state of flow, they just keep rocking and rolling, deal after deal after deal. Someone goes into that spiral, then I'm glad. I like this.
Yeah, but I think that's the thing that makes selling so interesting too, is because there's so many different variables.
Yes, exactly
that when you can get in flow, like everything sort of comes together for you.
It does.
And I think that a lot of the times people think selling maybe isn't as complex as some of the other things like modeling, financials, etc. But in a lot of cases, it's a lot more complex because all these variables are unobservable.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's funny because it's interesting, and I don't get into comparing myself with other people, but I live in a building where I think Darren and I are one of the few sales professionals in there.
Yeah.
But most people are in professional positions where they're paid fixed salaries. And I don't compare myself with other people. I try not to, but I often think, okay, well, I'm not a gastroenterologist, or I'm not the lead partner in a law firm. But my ability to go out and have the confidence to take anything on comes from the selling background. And that's what really, I think, again, not overconfidence or cockiness. I think, wow, what an advantage I have over them. Yeah, they may go to a hospital every day and have nurses blow smoke up their ear about how great they are, or have coffee served to them at the dentist office. But the advantage you have is you see so many different people, you learn so many different variables about interpersonal skills, personalities, emotional intelligence, empathy, relationships, till it builds this just tremendous amount of confidence in knowing that, not every day is a good day, but I can go out and I can create my own opportunities in life. And that goes back to what you asked. I believe I can create my own opportunities in life, and I'm going to. Can I share the videos real quick?
Absolutely.
Because I don't want to take too much time.
Sure.
So, first of all, thank you for letting me share today. This is good for me, because I believe I want to give something, and if one person remembers this in 20 years like I did from the guy that came in my class, I'm great. I feel good. And thanks for the great questions. So, I think Jasmine asked a question that kind of parlays into these two videos, and they're only a minute each. I'll have to have you stop it. This guy's named Mark Manson. He's written a great book. You can look it up. It has the title has some language that I won't want to repeat here. But he's being interviewed by a guy named Rich Roll. And if you'll play it for a minute, I want to talk to you about what the point is. So hit it real quick and I'll tell you when.
Treat an individual, a conscious individual, as a means, always as an end. Which is kind of a fancy philosophical way of saying, the highest value, the thing we should value more than anything else is always the dignity of each human being. Mm-hmm. And if you subscribe to any sort of religion or ideology or relationship or passion that ever forces you to treat another individual as a means, does not respect their inherent dignity as a human being, then that is a moral failure.
Okay.
Yeah, you describe.
So this is what I was speaking of in the beginning about people being manipulative and really looking out for themselves, like Eddie, what's in it for me. I listened to this podcast and that hit with me, because he says that the highest value in the universe is treating other people with dignity. So when you're interacting with other people on a personal and professional level, I don't care what they do, who they are, what they have, what they don't have, what their education is, how you see them. Always treat them with dignity, always. And if you're if you're a sales professional, if you can always keep that in your back pocket, you'll always end up with good results in what you do. I promise you, you're not going to always win every deal, but people realize it when you do treat them with respect and dignity. Okay, next one real quick. This is Simon Sinek. I love this one, especially since I was in the military.
In the military, they give medals to people who are willing to sacrifice themselves so that others may gain. In business, we are willing to give bonuses to people who will sacrifice others so that we may gain.
Okay, stop that. Can you play that one more
We
time?
have it backward.
One more time. I want you to listen to what he's saying.
In the military, they give medals to people who are willing to sacrifice themselves so that others may gain. In In business, we are willing to give bonuses to people who will sacrifice others so that we may gain.
Did you hear that? What he's saying is, people are rewarded in the military, Purple Hearts, Medal of Honors, because they put themselves in a line of fire or in a dangerous or risky situation to save other people's lives, and they did it selflessly, and they're rewarded for it. In the corporate world, you're going to find that people will do just the opposite. They'll sacrifice you so that they can gain or they can get a bonus. In closing, don't ever be that person that sacrifices another person for your own motivations or for your own personal greed or for your own personal benefit. Again, always hold the highest dignity for other people in every situation. That's it.
Thanks, Brad.
Great. Before I leave, any other questions?
All right, so you guys have your exam coming up, so make sure that you study for that. All right, and then after that exam, we've got some role plays coming up, so make sure that you are going to prepare for those as well. We'll talk about those after the exam.